trust me. Although I did this morning, just as a small aside, I was on a video conference while still at home. And I had my phone, and I realized I'd forgotten my suit jacket. So I ran back upstairs, and, oh, wait a minute, my wife is watching this. She's out of town. She's watching the live stream. And so I ran back upstairs and grabbed my gray suit jacket, and then got all the way down to an appointment near Carytown. When I put my jacket on, realized I had the wrong suit jacket to a different suit. And so I had my appointment, and luckily I don't think I embarrassed myself there. I had to rush home and then get back for a lunch meeting. But needless to say, at least I'm here, and I only lost my train of thought because I was watching the video when I grabbed the suit jacket, which is how terrible it is. But in addition to, what's that? Nice tie. Well, thank you. You know, this is a tie from the museum shop when we did the Forbidden City show about 12, 13 years ago, and I'll do a shout out to Lee Jin, who is our retired carpenter curator of East Asian art, who's, I think, watching us tonight on the live stream. But as the director of the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, I've had a very different role in this arena, and that's about curating the exhibition American-born Hungary. And if you've wondered why did we title it that way, it was actually shorthand because that's what we use for labels, American, photographer, and then where their country of origin. And so it's what we do on labels, and we thought, oh, wouldn't that be nice? And then our marketing people said, you know, we really like that. And I was trying to change it. But it's all about a story that is so central to the history of photography that this group of photographers over the span of decades come to this country, become Americans, but the influence they had on photography and other photographers for generations is virtually unparalleled. I can't pick another country that has had as much influence as that. So I began the exhibition planning literally 40 years ago, wrote the outline for it 30 years ago in April of 1994, and then about 13 years ago started working on the exhibition in my spare time. You know, I got a day job, which kind of keeps me busy, and as you probably all know, we're building a brand new wing, and the next McLaughlin wing. We're raising almost $500 million, and so I've luckily got all of this done in time to be able to focus on those two important priorities. But go back probably 30 years ago, there's an annual art fair for photography, which is it's the Association of International Photography Art Dealers, APAD. And at that, I met Robert Gurbo, curator of the Kerte Foundation. It's like, oh my God, this is so important that the centerpiece of this exhibition, we have 34 photographers in the exhibit. No one, and we have got Laszlo Moholy-Nagy and Martin Munkashi, I mean, world-class photographers, but nobody is as important as Andre Kerte. So I was thrilled to meet Robert. And then about 12, 13 years ago, when I started working on this in my abundant free time, I rekindled the relationship with Robert, visited him in New York, and started talking about how we could work together. And let me just say, the support that Robert and the Kerte Foundation have provided for this exhibition and for this museum are just beyond fabulous. The foundation is the #1 supporter of this exhibition with 3 very generous grants to work through the research and travel, but then also the publication of the catalog that accompanies the exhibition. So along the way, Robert and I have become great friends. His son, Victor, is here with us. Victor actually was a lender to the Storied String exhibition. He's a musician, has played at Carnegie Hall, and you know, it's become actually they become part of the family here at the Virginia Museum of Fine Arts. And Robert, though, started with Andre Kerte in 1978, working with Andre working with the archives. When Andre died, he continued to work then with the foundation, became the curator for the Kerte Foundation, and then in the past, I guess it's been about a year and a half, Robert is now running the Kerte Foundation, which does distribute grants and support, but also has made tremendous gifts, books, as well as then, we have amazing gifts of artwork that have come from them as well. And so I have to say, very simply, without Robert and the Kerte Foundation, I'm not sure what this exhibition or that catalog would have materialized to be. But I would say this very simply, very much less than it is. And so probably more than anybody else, and there are lots of people I owe thanks to, Sarah Kennel, who is our curator of photography and been a great aid to making it. The people on our exhibition design team, our art handlers, everybody who's worked to make this exhibition. And by the way, as an advertisement, my exhibition will be ending on Sunday. It's open tonight till 9. And if I stop talking, you'll still have time to get down there. But also Sarah Kennel's A Long Arc, which she brought with her from Atlanta, 200 plus photographs of photography in the South. I mean, it is a masterpiece of an exhibition. So you have the opportunity tonight to hear what I will predict to be a fabulous story. I mean, no one else I know knew Andre as well as Robert, was part of the discovery of things that have helped and aided this exhibition and, of course, this institution as well. So it's my pleasure to introduce my colleague and my great friend, Robert Gurbo.
Thanks for that great introduction. You're way too kind. For those of you who haven't seen the exhibition, you must. It's only open a couple more days. And I'd like to say that what I'm about to present here is not a scholarly presentation. I'm kind of working off of the backs of people like Alex and Sarah Kennel, who have done all this great research and documentation of the history of photography. I, through a series of serendipity, ended up working with Andre at the end of his life and somehow ended up here on this podium, 40, 50 years later. So what I'm about to present is an overlay of my understanding of the work. Your understanding of the work could be completely different. The photographs 100% speak for themselves. They don't need my overlay. But once you have it, it's hard to see the photographs any differently. I kind of will stumble through the beginning because I'm really uncomfortable talking in front of a crowd. But once I'm actually hiding behind Andre's photographs, I'm basically fine. So what I'm going to do, because I usually, when I give this lecture, I usually have this kind of unlimited amount of time. I'm using the photographs as place cards to remind me to tell stories that I know of. In order to describe what happened to Andre in America, you really have to get a sense of who he was and how the body of work is really about a search for home once he's actually left Hungary. So I'm going to start with a speed course in learning how to use this little device. A speed course in his period of work in Hungary and Paris, so that I can really dwell on what happened to him in the United States and how he overcame it. It's also an incredible love story. Andre was very, very driven to prove himself to his wife, Elizabeth, and the body of work is really, in a way, an homage to her. So I'm going to start with the first slide, hopefully, and this is actually one of the first photographs of Andre Kerte's. It is, I recently learned, it's an auto portrait, so it's one of the first photo booth photographs. It was a storefront in Hungary that you would go in and sit down, and you would actually push a button when the shutter would be taken. He had always longed to be a photographer, according to his stories. And what you will find out if you choose to do some reading on Andre is that he had these incredible stories and sagas, as I've now learned many Hungarians do. I've also learned, as many photographers do, the stories are often made up. What we're going to do a little bit here of is deciphering between truth, fiction, and where they merge and how they affect his photographs. So his mother in this photograph ran a coffee shop. Andre was born in 1894. He was middle of 3 boys. His father died when he was very young. His mother ran a coffee shop in Budapest, and he was given a camera when he graduated from high school. And it was really a gift, according to his diary, a gift to he and his brother. And his brother and he experimented with the camera. This is him at, I think, about 18, a lanky young man, excited to go out and explore the world with his camera. And he did what we all do with cameras, especially now that they're always around. He did more or less selfies. This is a photograph of he and his mother and his younger brother, Yeno, who was, as you'll learn as we go through this, his soulmate in photography. He defined his younger brother as a perfect collaborator. Andre took the pictures, his brother played with the chemistry, taught him how to do stuff. It was kind of the brains of the outfit as things started up. This was his uncle, who helped bring up the 3 boys once his father died. And why is this not working? It stopped. I'm going to turn it off and turn it on again. There we go. Here we go. It's not working. Unfortunate to be frozen on this photograph, too. Anybody got any ideas? This is no longer functioning. Okay. Okay, now we're back. So he did these portraits of himself, and this is his older brother Imre, who he fought with all the time, because Andre was always wasting money on photography, and his younger brother Yeno. Andre was so obsessed with recording himself that he went to a machinist and had a self-timer made. And many of the photographs in this presentation are going to be self-portraits. Here he is racing with his younger brother. Of course, he captures a moment when he's out in front. He's drafted into during World War I and does this incredibly, very, very beautiful photograph of forced march to the front. He documents himself as a soldier. In response to the newspapers, and now newspapers are just starting to actually be able to reproduce photographs, and they're in sync with the government, and they want to show people back home that the soldiers are having a good life. They have contests, and he's sending these photographs back to his brother, who's processing them and submitting them to the papers. Now, what's that doing? Okay. So he's doing these, he's creating these photographs, but he's also doing these self-portraits, and you'll see this three-quarter face where he's actually watching and observing the picture being taken. He turns a standard portrait into an action by him observing in it, and you'll see this three-quarter face over and over and over again as you start to sift through the body of work. Here he is again, watching the picture being taken, creating a conversation, making it workable. I am moving through these fast because we have 90 years to cover, basically. So he's wounded. He documents himself being wounded. He lost use of his left arm. He had experimental surgery on his left arm to reconnect nerves, and documents himself as he's in the recovery process. While recovering, part of his physical therapy was swimming, and he creates this, what is now seen as a seminal image in the history of photography. He said he was sitting up on the bleachers watching the men dive through the water, and he noticed how the refracted light altered the bodies, and made a number of exposures. He says this is the only negative that actually survived. He said from this point on, he was always looking for natural distortions in life. So he was looking in refracted light, reflections here and there. And it comes into play much later on in a number of ways. After the war, he goes from job to job, and his diaries and notes indicate how miserable he is. He ends up working in either a bank or the stock market. It's kind of hard to tell what it is. And he meets this woman, Esbert Solomon, who later changes her name to Elizabeth Solly. And with lots of twists and turns, they become lifelong companions. He falls head over heels in love with her and begins to document their life together. She is a painter. She draws and paints, and their mutual love of art is really what brought them together. She brings him to a circle of artists, most significant of which is Abba Novak, painted here reclining, or photographed here reclining. And this circle of artists embrace Andre as one. So immediately he's no longer thinking of himself as a photographer. He's thinking of himself as an artist. And I always see him as an artist who uses photography, as opposed to a photographer who became an artist. He was always an artist from day one. So he travels with these people when they go out in the field, and he photographs as they're drawing and painting. He starts looking at work and trading work with them, and starts mimicking what he sees in the paintings, drawings, and etchings in photographs. And he's also experimenting with who he is in these photographs. Like here, he's the astute businessman, or the country bumpkin. Whenever I look at this photograph, I always know that, like, he knew that you would be looking at this photograph 100 years later. He's just staring at it, us all knowing that he would someday be discovered as the drunkard. You know, like a country bumpkin playing his flute on the side of the road. The athlete, the advisor to young children, in drag as a woman. Or in a kind of projected self-portrait as the goat. And we'll find him doing these photographs of other objects and other people where he's really presenting himself in his own psyche. Andre always said, whenever I asked him, or when I first asked him, you know, what was the secret behind his work, and he always said, I photograph what I feel. And I thought, wow, this guy's been around enough that he now knows how to create sound bites. And the reality is, after having spent 40 years going through his work, all these photographs are a response of his feelings. He used his brother as a model. He definitely revered his brother Jenno, and worked out portraiture, and worked on the intimacy of portraiture by photographing him, worked on photographing indoors to see what kind of exposures they'd get. Worked with refractions and reflections. His brother was this incredible athlete with this incredible body, so he was the perfect model. They had a very, very close relationship, partially because Andre had a lisp and his brother had a stutter, so they really could only communicate well between each other. But you could see how they played with Greek myths and different ideas, even to the point where Andre put wings on his brother as he was jumping. So now he has this kind of trinity almost, himself, Elizabeth, and Jenno. And every great artist works in a community with the support of other people who help understand their work. And this is this little piece of the puzzle that he's kind of put together. And he is always trying to paint this love life as, he's an artist. He's trying to present the photographs that represent his thinking of what the relationship is. And he does all of these romantic photographs. There's that three-quarter face again where he's watching the picture being taken. But it was a volatile relationship. Elizabeth was a very strong woman, and they often fought. And I'm going to read one quote from his diary where he starts to talk about the relationship, and it is the impetus for him to move to Paris. So he says, I ran into B, that was his nickname for her. She was irritated, nervous, and pensive. Directly before we parted, she said, let's be candid. I'm the stronger between the two of us. You're totally absorbed in your love for me. I want to spend my energy on other things as well. First, you have to achieve a situation, and then we will have time for love. I'm tired of this situation, she goes on. I want to be a bride. Either this will happen or you will go away, and until you establish yourself in existence, you do not come for me, and we do not even correspond. And he says he responded with a few bewildered, childish words, and she walked out imperiously. So this actually becomes the impetus for him to actually leave. He realizes he has no real life for himself in Budapest. He gets permission from his mother to go to Paris, and on his birthday, I guess he's 29, maybe 30, he writes, I'm 29 and I'm a nobody. So this man who's created this seminal body of work that we now know leaves Hungary, leaves Budapest, this insecure young man hoping to find a real life as a photographer in Paris, leaving behind a body of work that is matched by no one. He finds himself in Paris. He roams the streets, and some of these pictures are pixelated. They look great on my screen, but I have to change them. I think this photograph is in the show downstairs, so you should go take a look at it down there after this lecture. And he creates these kind of lonely, lost, sad, but beautiful photographs of Paris. He's now working with carte postale paper, which is a very lush paper, about the size of your cell phones, so they're postcards. And he's making contact prints with a little bit larger camera than he normally had. And he's making these prints, and this is the camera he's using. So, you think of all the bells and whistles our cameras have today, and think of these incredible photographs that he's making with this very, very simple camera. It's a Steidl detective camera, which is actually downstairs in the exhibition. He ends up at the Café du Dôme, Café Society in Paris. Is very fluid, and he ends up hanging out in a cafe where a number of Eastern European artists hang out. And he starts photographing them and working with them. So now all of a sudden he's building this circle of artists around him. And he starts printing the photographs on this card postal paper, which actually fit in his jacket pocket. And he can go to the local cafe and spread them out on a table, and he'll get assignments or he'll get commissions from other artists to be photographed. And it always irks me a bit that, certainly he was influenced by what was going on in Paris, as any artist would be, but oftentimes it's said that, Andre became a photographer in Paris, and the reality is that he essentially worked out all of these problems and portraiture issues, working with his brother and his family, and actually arrived at Paris a very mature, astute photographer waiting for the right assignments and the right things to fall into play. So here's a photograph he created in Paris, and he's sending them back to his brother and his family. And of course, this is real setup. He sends it to them with the intent of showing them that he's made it and he's really okay. And they send him back letters saying, "You look hungry, you look lonely, come back." So they certainly didn't have the impact that he had hoped. And again, I mentioned his brother Yeno, an important figure in this, and I can't help but think that these early portraits of his brother informed the portraits that he was making in Paris. The other piece of the puzzle is that he was sending these photographs back to his brother, who shortly thereafter left for Argentina and sent him this postcard saying he had arrived. He did this portrait of his brother before he left, and you'll see, hung it in his darkroom, so his brother was watching over him. And I'm just going to read to you this incredible letter from his brother, which, when we did the National Gallery show, Sarah Kennel worked on this as well, actually, or I worked on it with them. They basically put this exhibition together at the National Gallery. And his brother writes to him critiquing the photographs. And he says, "Of your latest pictures, the first one is your old style. The one of Miss Neems leaning on her elbow with the other woman is conceived in Angelo's spirit." Angelo was a photographer he worked with in Hungary. When you took the picture of the woman sitting at the coffee table, you had already met Pecci, another photographer. Your first independently visualized picture was that of Zeltzer and the No, but that was still experimenting. You started to become Andre Kerte with the photograph of the Greek engineer. For me, the greatest surprise of all are the two pictures of Gunvor Berg, these two photographs. Here you are really sharp, meaning sharp in focus as a person. You have your own personality. It's not the camera anymore that takes the pictures, but the lens portrays it the way you want to, especially the three-quarter portrait. I don't even know how you did it. It's not sharp, but it's not annoyingly blurry. It's drawn softly, but the contrast is strong. Technically, it's impeccable, and its composition, I no longer recognize you. When we were parted, you were hesitant, lacked self-awareness, little individuality, much imitation. It seems you needed a year's worth of torment for your daily bread to become independent and conscious. I mean, talk about the proper amount of support and insight from a man who wasn't a photographer. But he understood Andre's work so deeply that he was able to relay this information to him. And in 1927 or 26, he leaves for Argentina. And these two men, although they correspond by letters, they don't speak to each other again until 1962. By chance, he ends up with an assignment photographing Mondrian, and creates what we know as these seminal images. Probably his most famous image, Chez Mondrian, of Mondrian's doorway. There's an incredible story of him moving all the furniture and Mondrian looking bewildered as to why he was doing this when he shot this. Satiric dancer. These two pictures are probably the highlight of his career, like 1926, 27, in his eyes, highlight. He has an exhibition, his first exhibition. The exhibition leads to magazine assignments. There's a fledgling magazine world and newspaper world as photographs, the halftone process is being refined, but photographs are used just as wood blocks were in the magazines beforehand. They were mostly used as illustrations. So he was really not a reporter, but an illustrator. And I really learned this from an exhibition that Michel Frizot, a scholar and curator in Paris, where he actually in the vitrines put the pictures that we know of as key photographs in the history of photography. And they were essentially magazine assignments. So Andre had figured out a way to actually create art at the same time as making money. And he would use each assignment to actually explore different areas. We know this as an absolute seminal image in photography, and it was a job. He's reproducing all over in different magazines and newspapers throughout Europe. And I really am speeding through this. This needs hours of conversation. He stumbles on distortion mirrors at Luna Park with Carlo Rim, who is soon-to-be editor of Vue magazine. And they create this hilarious series of 14 or 15 photographs of the two of them experimenting in the mirror. Andre puts this idea in his back pocket. He relates this back to his early photograph of the underwater swimmer. And the first issue of Vue is of Carlo Rim distorted by the mirrors. He continues on assignment, also photographing on the way to assignments. He's photographing things he sees. He has this incredible point of view of looking from above. You'll find this lone man walking through the streets as a theme that always goes through his body of work. His composition, his timing is impeccable, and this is because when he was first starting out, he didn't have the money to do anything, so he had to learn to be a stalker, like a photographer of prey. I remember when I first started working for him, he gave me a box of 35 millimeter negatives and said to me, sort these out and get them in the right order. And I'm thinking, oh, great, I'm going to see all the bad stuff now, because everything I ever saw was really good. And I'd see on one roll of film, 16 of the pictures that are reproduced highly in different books and things. So on one roll of film, he's got 16 major photographs. At that time, photographers photographed, film was cheap. And we were taught, go out and burn film and then edit in a darkroom. And Andre had a saying about photographers who work that way, which was, even a blind chicken can get its corn. Great sense of humor, great sense of timing. Whenever anybody's reading a newspaper or on a subway, I think of this cow. Incredible sense of timing and mystery. He befriends Lajos Tihany. For those Hungarians in the audience, I apologize for mispronouncing his name. A fellow artist, a fellow Hungarian, and with his brother not there, these two men become soulmates. And you could see they're trading ideas back and forth. They live in the same building. Andre does a self-portrait, Lajos does a self-portrait. There's his fork, there is, Lajos's fork. There's his version of glasses and pipe. He also, Andre, in 1928, marries a woman by the name of Rosa Klein, a woman who later changes her name to Andre Roger and becomes a photographer. But now he has this new kind of trinity together of Lajos Tihany, Rosa Klein, and himself, who help him think and help him support his work. There are only 2 photographs of Rosa in the archive, these 2. The rest have been destroyed for reasons you'll learn in a second or 2. Remember Elizabeth? Okay, so Elizabeth's the person who basically gave him the force to go to Paris, and he became this incredible photographer. So she comes to Paris in 1931. They had basically stopped corresponding. I think he saw her in Budapest once in the 27 or 28 when he went to Budapest. She comes to Paris and learns of his marriage and commits the total sin of, I always kind of describe this as, Andre offered this as a very romantic photograph, and I always see it as like, well, I kind of got married, she goes back to Budapest and presumably sends all of their photographs that she had of the 2 of them together, mails them back to them. And I found all of his half in his photographs, with his photographs, and I found this one piece of her photograph in her boxes of papers. So these photographs were not reunited until many years later. I mean, the total sin of destroying a photograph, that was such a romantic thing to him, must have really rocked him. He still continued to work, although with the war heating up and Europe heating up, he started to get less and less work. After having been in World War I, he became apolitical and chose not to take assignments. He really wasn't a fire chaser or a story catcher. He was someone who told stories. He did this series of distortions. In 1933, they were destined to be a book with Pierre McAuliffe, a poet and writer, writing the introduction. It was in Germany in production in 36 or so, and the book got stopped by the German government. The distortions were for a girly magazine, which gave him the right to do this kind of stuff. The distorted mirrors he actually rented, and actually in the exhibition downstairs is one of the distorted mirrors that he used. In 1933, Elizabeth comes back to Paris. He's divorced Rosa Klein, and he creates this self-portrait of the 2 of them. And I'm going to show you a couple of variations that he did of the photograph at the time. So these are actually 1933 vintage photographs of the original photograph. And he said he was trying to create a visualization of the metaphor, my better half. I could probably give a 5-hour lecture on these 3 photographs and their incarnations as he aged, all and above themselves. Of course, I kind of relate the cut-ups to this picture, but that's my overlay. He begins to photograph the 2 of them together, really trying to paint him as, now in charge with his wife, but it's really clear who's in charge from here on out. Right? So Andre's career, she also happens to arrive in Paris when his career is on a nosedive. Many of the editors and publishers have fled to New York already. He's getting letters from a editor, a guy who ran a photo agency, real articulate way of putting it, ran a photo agency by the name of Ernie Prince, sending him letters, come to New York, we need you. And he's getting letters from his brother Imre about how tense things are in Budapest, advising him to leave. And after much vacillation, Andre decides to leave for New York. He claims it was a one-year sabbatical, but there's lots of evidence that that was not the case. Again, with the self-portraits. He's always trying to document himself. So here he is in the hotel on the first day in New York, sleeves rolled up with the camera ready to take on New York. Very confident, but also looking out into the streets through the window to see what he can absorb. Notice he's taken on a large format camera here. I forgot to mention in 28, he started working with a 35 millimeter camera, the first Leica. Elizabeth comes to New York with other plans. This is not a one-year sabbatical. In Paris, she worked for Helena Rubinstein, and one of the chemists was Hungarian, and before they left, they signed a contract that he would come to New York, and she started a cosmetics firm, essentially making knockoffs of Parisian and Helena Rubinstein's fragrances. And she eventually becomes the support mechanism for the family as Andre's career just nosedives. His first photographs of New York are bewildered, beautifully poignant photographs about being lost, about being disoriented. He found the buildings way too large. There was no cafe society. Artists in New York were individuals. If they did hang out at all, they hang out in each other's studios. He didn't speak English. His French wasn't great. His Hungarian actually wasn't that good. So the pictures, the original early photographs are about alienation and the sense of like, where do I fit in here? In fact, so he defined this as a self-portrait that the title of the photograph is Lost Cloud. I used to think this was cute, a beautiful image, and then when he said, that's me, I'm the cloud, I'm lost, it took on a completely different meaning for me. And it also gave me the opportunity to look at other photographs that he may or may not have defined as self-portraits and look for clues where he's telling his story inside the pictures. So he makes these kind of personified self-portraits or projected self-portraits, kind of reflecting his state of mind. And it goes back to, I photograph what I feel. He's really taken back by the size and scale of the city, but tries to document it. And clearly, feels like he may have, made a major mistake, and he's got some really harrowing photographs in this body of work. Again, inexplicably, he decides to become, he agrees in his contract with Prince, he agrees to become a fashion photographer. And in the letters, the Prince tells him what lenses to buy and what equipment to bring with him. And he comes equipped with a 4x5 camera. And perhaps he was just tired of being out in the street. He's getting older. He wants to settle down. He's also dealing with Elizabeth and her company's starting up. He also has this infraction of having been married before, so maybe this is him settling down in the studio. But he starts working as a fashion photographer, and I'd almost like to cover the mic when I say this, but he wasn't a good fashion photographer. The photographs are stifled, sometimes poorly lit, most times ridiculous. And Prince had offered him other assignments, and Prince turned out to not be the man he was. The picture agency Keystone was on its way down as well, and I think Prince had hoped that having Andre on board would actually bolster him. But he had no assignments for Andre, so he became very frustrated and started freelancing on his own. Prince learned of it, sued him. Andre starts to go outside with the models, and you could see he's no Munkachi when it comes to fashion photographs. There's some very beautiful Munkachi photographs in the exhibit downstairs. They're all just so kind of weird and stiff and stifled. This is one I love, actually. In 1939, he's locked out of his apartment because he can't pay his rent, a hotel he's living in. He collapses on the street and wakes up with attacks of, and from here on out, he has attacks of vertigo. Now, this is probably accurate because I've seen him have attacks of vertigo in his apartment later in life. But he claimed that he was no longer able to work in the darkroom from here on out. So, you know, he can't get work, he's in a lawsuit, and he decides to go out on his own. He can't get work because of a language barrier. And here he is, this great artist that basically sort of invented photojournalism, or was at the breaking time of photojournalism. This is another self-portrait that he created during that time. He called it, he said, "This is me. I'm a tulip, young and full of life, wilted before my time." I'm just going to run through a number of photographs that he created. This one you could see downstairs. These are all images that he created to try and create like a stock of photographs to convince people that he could get work in New York. And each one has a credible story with it. So he hires a agent to get him a job with Life magazine. He was always boxed out of Life magazine. He's going to photograph the harbor. And he ends up doing 150 photographs, submitting them to Life magazine. And they're all about harbor life. This is the assignment, harbor life in New York City. He even goes to the extent of putting a Life magazine down in the bunks, thinking he's sure to get it reproduced. And of course, the day or the week it's supposed to be reproduced, Britain enters the war, and Life magazine decides that it would be imprudent of them to actually put photographs of the harbor in the magazine because it could be used for espionage, so the article gets killed. He's defined by the United States government as an enemy alien and told not to photograph out in the street for fear of being arrested. So his career has just fallen apart. Also, in 1944, the editors of Harper's Magazine did an article devoted to the years 1939 to 44 in photography, and did a tree of photography. And this was an editor and a publisher that he had worked with avidly earlier. And you could see here that, Versailles and Cartier-Bresson and Abbott are all here, and he's left out of this circle, and he's actually left out of people that he taught how to photograph. He taught Versailles how to photograph. He has this one bright spot where the book Day of Paris is published, and it's reproduced everywhere. It goes into 6 or 7 publications, but he sits and stares at the phone thinking it's going to lead to assignments, and it doesn't happen. Alexander Lieberman, artist, editor at Condé Nast's House and Garden, hires him. Lieberman says he hired him because he felt sorry for him. He hires him to do interiors, and Andre becomes the photographer for House and Garden. And they attribute the beauty of the magazine to his photographs, while he attributes this to being hack work that killed him day after day. So he does these medicinal photographs, these impeccably organized, beautifully lit photographs, day in, day out, carrying heavy equipment, going alone, visiting the homes of rich and famous, and never really being able to connect in any way and get to the next step. It does give them money, and they are starting to think about retiring. Elizabeth's thinking she can stop working at House and Garden. It gives them the opportunity to buy a house up in the country where he photographs Elizabeth together, he together. He still longs and has always longed to go back to Paris long after the war was over. And this was a constant bit of strife between he and Elizabeth. He takes up an apartment at 2 Fifth Avenue. This is his first photograph of 2 Fifth Avenue. Andre is always about creating a first image. The first image when he was in New York. Here he is with the rooster, putting it in the window. He had picked up this rooster in an antique shop that had once belonged to Abby Rockefeller, and puts it in his window. And this rooster becomes his sentinel overlooking the city from here on out. He's in an apartment at 2 Fifth Avenue, and when he went to the apartment, it was still under construction, and he picked a floor that he said would give him archetypal photographs of the city down below. Again, here's his photograph of himself in in Paris. And you'll notice how similar the kind of posing is. And you'll notice this white mask up in the upper right-hand corner. That's a life mask that he had, a death mask, which he called a life mask. And he begins to photograph himself and the mask and other objects in his apartment. The elevator operator and the maintenance men in the building spoke Hungarian, so he was at the first time kind of feeling at home in the village, which had a bohemian feeling of Paris and also a bit of Budapest. And he starts documenting the city down below, almost exploring it and looking for how people live in New York and how they adjust. He always has these lone figures walking through the photographs. And in '54, he hits this absolute masterpiece of Washington Square Day. And I say hits it. He'd been working on this photograph since 1912, always looking for that lone person through the scenes. But here in New York, he finally has one where the composition, everything just melds together perfectly. So while it was 125th of a second, it was really 40 years in the making. And part of it is that what you'll see is that there are all of these photographs that over and over again, he keeps reworking these themes. He might hit this, he still continued to photograph it, hoping to get a better version of it at another time. Tragedy strikes again. Elizabeth's partner goes blind. And she ends up having to keep after him. So his plans of retirement, his plans of slowing down evaporate, and he continues to photograph the homes of House and Garden, for House and Garden, but photographs himself again. He documents himself, setting himself up in photographs, or earmarks the tension he feels in what he's doing. He shows himself, vaporizing in a mirror, or just waiting to bide his time, or dwarfed by the spaces he's in. And this absolutely incredible photograph it's a time exposure, so he set up the camera, made the exposure, and then ran into the picture. So you have him making this photograph, and I kind of compare these two images where the satiric dancer was kind of the peak of his career, and here he is at the very bottom where he's actually disappearing. And his greatest fear in life was not to be remembered. His friend and photographer, Robert Capa, steps on a landmine in 1954. He steps out on his porch and creates this photograph. 1961, he's had it. He's getting close to, I guess he's 67 years old. He starts photographing in his home, and he decides he's going to retire and become an amateur again. In his back pocket, he has Monroe Wheeler. This is not a Cortez. This is a George Platt Lyons photograph of Monroe Wheeler. And Monroe Wheeler was the head of publications at MoMA, and Andre was doing an end run around the curator of photography at MoMA, and he had a show planned. But so he retires thinking that this is going to be a piece of the puzzle. The first thing he does on the day he would have signed his contract is he actually calls his brother Yeno, and they speak to each other for the first time since 1926. And he arranges to go down to Argentina and visit him. And all of a sudden, the letters of support start coming back and forth between the two of them. He meets with Sarkowski, who kind of hedges about giving him a show. This is John Sarkowski, curator at MoMA. And it becomes very frustrated with him because he offered him a show and then pulled back the date and changed the dates. So Andre has this group of photographers that he works with, that he met with. Basically, it was a drinking crowd of 35 millimeter enthusiasts who called themselves, the club was this Circle of Confusion. And the Circle of Confusion is an aberration on a lens, that every lens has one black spot that nobody can kind of explain. And all these photographers were devoted to the fact that photography was not a precise object. They all loved 35 millimeter photography, but they all didn't have jobs as photographers. They were linesmen and editors and copy editors in newspapers and magazines. And these people become his support mechanism. He has a show at Long Island University, which is actually a school hallway, and it gets reviewed in Newsweek, New York Times, all sorts of different magazines, as if it's this major show. Versailles comes to New York, and Andre tells him he's a dead man. Versailles, the two of them were speaking at this point, of course, puts him in touch with Romeo Martinez, who was the editor of Camera magazine. It was a Swiss magazine. And Versailles writes this article, My Friend Andre Kerte. It's all about how we learn photography from Andre, something that Versailles denied later in life. And this is the start of him really having some profile. Martinez arranges for Andre to be in the Venice Biennial. It seems like a setup. Andre wins the Gold Award. He travels to Paris with Elizabeth, starts to photograph in Paris, and he's in a trance from this point on. Of this photograph, he wrote in his diary, I was in Montmartre today, and ever since have been in a trance, and it relates back to this early photograph of Montmartre years earlier. He talks the director of the Bibliothèque Nationale into giving him an exhibit, and the exhibit is pulled off of the boats or wherever they were being shipped from to go back to New York, and he has prints made. He shoots around Paris to add to the show to make it look contemporary, and he has this landmark show in Paris, and I'm going to skip this. It's a great photograph, but it's a long story. Lo and behold, John Sarkowski is on his honeymoon in Paris and sees the show and flips out. Now, Elizabeth has been in Paris and then went back to New York, and we have this vast archive of letters of her writing to him, telling him, do this, do that, make sure you do this because, we need to do all this. And she writes to him on November 14th, 1963, John Sarkowski called Tuesday evening and he said that he met you. I asked him when the exhibit would be, and he responded, the exhibit cannot be done in just a few moments. He constantly hedged and always was haughty in his expressions. He colored it as not being enthusiastic about his expression. I now understand your criticism of Sarkowski, now that you wrote to me that he wanted to send this exhibition to Paris. But what a rotten person. He doesn't say anything, he doesn't do anything, and then you accomplish your success in your own way. And he then comes here and is jealous. He should die. It's regrettable that you canceled the Smithsonian because of this jerk. So Sarkowski then actually gives him an exhibit and starts telling the story of Andre coming with 2 suitcases or 2 shopping bags full of photographs, and kind of earmarks himself as the person who rediscovered Andre. And while Andre was very appreciative, and I'm not, the Sarkowski exhibition was, a incredible point in time for him. He had to also endure being discovered by somebody who was much younger than him, who actually didn't discover him. And that there was a show set up early, before Sarkowski had come in. Here's Sarkowski, and so his show is in Paris. Now, what I neglected to tell you before is when he left for New York, he left his negatives with a journalist, and they lost touch. And she had all of his negatives, or most of his negatives, and she sees his name in the paper and tells him that during the war, she carried his negatives out to a villa in the south of France, and had buried them in a bomb shelter during the war. And he goes to the town to retrieve the photographs. The name of the town is La Réunion, which is incredible. And he more or less reenacts where the negatives had been. And he now has, for the first time, his whole archive of photographs to actually, the ones that have survived, to actually mine and look through. So he starts playing with old photographs and enlarging them for the first time, playing with how they are and mimicking some of the things that are going on in the 60s with grainy imagery and high contrast photographs, creating this image from that earlier one and saying, well, I was doing this in 1914. He takes this photograph of he and Elizabeth, one that he had played with in 1933, and again, I can't help but think of this photograph, and it comes up with this more or less final version of it, which we'll see again and again. Sarkowski gives him the show. It's a bit of a success, but nothing really comes of it. MoMA doesn't buy photographs from him, and he ends up being deflated. In steps Cornel Capa, Robert Capa's younger brother, who was obsessed with the concept of what happens to all the negatives of these great photojournalists who have died. And he arranges to have a show at the Riverside Museum. He arranges for first Andre to have a small book published. He creates this exhibition called The Concerned Photographer. And he included Andre and Leonard Fried because they were living photographers. And a lot of these pictures were war photographs and photographs about civil rights and stuff. And Andre became the lighthearted antidote to the photographs in the exhibition. Andre hung out at the exhibition and signed prints that he sold, and it basically was the start of International Center of Photography. And it was all based on the fact that he sold so many prints at this opening, or at this exhibition. The exhibition travels to Japan, and Andre finds out that he has a following in Japan because some photographers that he had met in the 20s and 30s in Paris who were Japanese, went back to Japan and preached his work. And when he goes to this opening, there's a line around the block to get him to sign the catalog. So he comes back completely energized and begins photographing in and out around the city. And he's really now at a point where like he's at full steam. Things are really kind to fall in place. I'm zipping through pictures I should spend hours on, but the title of this photograph is The Critic. Continues to photograph out his window. Has an incredible sense of timing, poignancy, impeccable sense of geometry. He's now home, photographing from his window day in, day out, still studying New Yorkers to see how they tick, because he certainly never really felt like a New Yorker, when in fact a New Yorker is somebody who never feels like a New Yorker. Remote stopped again. Oh. There we go. Cornell also introduced him to the publishers at Grossman Publishers, and he starts producing books. Light Gallery opens up, and all of a sudden, photographs are selling, and he's making money hand over fist. The books are used to, by a handful of galleries that are starting to actually, as stock photographs, and do you want this, do you want that? And Andre's getting orders for prints left and right. Things seem to be in place, but Andre really is very, very pensive. This is a photograph done in 1972. He's 78 years old. He seems to have crested again in terms of notoriety, but he certainly is wondering where it's all going to go next. I'm going to skip this slide too because we don't have the time, but I relate these two pictures as one. The one up above is, they're both about water, and one by a stoic old man and one by a young man trying to re-find his life together again. He does photographs of he and Elizabeth, really these incredible bifurcated photographs where he and Elizabeth are interacting in the shadows, but she's there alone, shielding herself from the light, and in fact shielding herself from him. Things seem to all be in the right place now. He's making the kind of money that he should have. Only problem is Elizabeth becomes ill. She has many of the photographs, she's chain smoking. She has lung cancer. After a year's period of taking care of her in the hospital, she dies. This photograph titled Flowers for Elizabeth are the flowers that he had sent to the hospital, and they were returned because she had died. Like a dutiful journalist, he documents her passing. Even the setting of his own stone. Saved some money, he had his own name put on it as well. He begins to photograph around the house, but they're these silent photographs, and around the neighborhood. They're just so sad and so beautiful at the same time. The chair that she once sat on their balcony. People walking in pairs. He's no longer with a pair. He said slowly, slowly he stopped photographing, and he was really a man waiting to die. Then in Brentano's bookshop window, he discovers this glass bust that he swears is Elizabeth. That the nape of the neck and the slope of the shoulders was Elizabeth. He looks at it for weeks, decides to walk on the other side of the street to not buy it, or not go in and buy it. And then when it's pulled from the window, he rushes in and buys it and sets it up in his window where he had once set up the rooster. And he begins to photograph this glass bust, but switches to the Polaroid camera. Right? And Graham Nash, who was a friend, Graham Nash, the musician, came to visit him. Graham Nash is also a photographer. Nash had been given a camera for the Polaroid Artists Project, and he came to show it to Andre, and Andre said, "Thank you very much," and took the camera and started working with the Polaroid. And there are a gazillion reasons why this worked, but one of them is he's in deep, deep mourning and grief. And the process of getting the negatives processed, and he'd take a photograph and it would take weeks before he got them. And here he's got these pictures shooting out of his camera minutes after he's taken them. So he can experience what he's experienced and experience his grief and sense of loss and rage while he's looking through the photographs. And day in, day out, his apartment is full of this beautiful windows and lights, and it's refracting all over the place. So he sets up this still life, and just every day, every time of the day, it's something different. He buys a second one because he fears his housekeeper is going to break it, which in fact she does at some point. But he then photographs the two together. And he says he would wake up in the morning, he'd forget to eat, he'd forget to take his pills. He'd be photographing all afternoon, realize he was hungry. And he said slowly, slowly, he lost the pain. He does this incredibly powerful series of photographs that actually pull him up out of the depths of his depression. And ironically, or interestingly, it's Elizabeth who was forced to go to Paris. When he was in Paris in 1963, she wrote him a letter telling him, "Oh God, I now realize, since we've spent so much time in Paris together," and I'm paraphrasing, when I was there for the opening or before the opening, if you can make a life for us again in Paris, we'll give up our life here in New York and move. So that was really the force that pushed him over the top and got him going again in like 1963. And finally he gets to that crest of really making the kind of money, and they have the money where he could have moved. She dies. And then he finds this glass bust, and the glass bust becomes a surrogate for him, for her. And he begins regenerating himself through this glass bust. So all of the different periods of his life really are driven by his desire to prove himself to her, even in death. He starts playing with other objects. People learn he's photographing this glass stuff, and everybody keeps bringing him glass objects. So he begins working with them, doing distortions through some of the glass objects. And this is a really powerful body of work that really hasn't fully been explored yet. Begins photographing streets down below. Starts playing with different objects and making very graphic images. Elizabeth's absence allows him to have visitors more often than he did. And now there are different people streaming in his apartment. This is Sylvia Plocki, the photographer in the show. Can't think of his name. He's a Japanese photographer. Here's me 50 years and 50 pounds ago. Here's his brother Yeno, who came to visit him in the 70s. he begins experimenting with old ideas. So here we have this photograph, which I keep pounding into you. The 1933 incarnations of it, the 1963 incarnation of it. And this was his Christmas card that he sent to people in 1980. Unfortunately, I wasn't recipient of one of them because they're worth a fortune now. But he puts a crown of thorns over his hands, and I could spend hours trying to explain this and get nowhere. The rooster in the window. Here it is in 72 with the World Trades in the background. He starts playing it. So he's investigating old work and old ideas, again with a new piece of equipment. So over and over again, the equipment change just is a new device to recharge him. He just does these incredibly beautiful photographs, and with a camera that most people couldn't even get a decent photograph out of. Sorry to be going through these so fast. I should have been more judicious in my selection. But you can see he's reinvestigating old ideas. Here's the 1926 self-portrait. Here he is as a much older man. Keeps playing with it until he gets it right, until he's almost evaporating in the room. He does travel to Paris. A bunch of friends in Paris buy him an apartment, and he goes to Paris for openings and exhibitions. But we find that the pictures are kind of disorienting. So he has the Seine flooded over, or if you remember his photograph of the very delicate photograph of the way the streets were cleaned in Paris. Now they're filled with pigeons taking over the spaces that he once knew. For years, this picture haunted me. I couldn't figure out why I liked it. It's just a roll of paper towels and a Matus bottle. And then one day, I found the two of these sitting next to each other, and I realized the geometry was very, very similar. So sometimes photographers take pictures and they don't even know why. I'm sure he didn't realize that this geometry was so similar to his original photograph of Mondrian's doorway. He did finally reunite Elizabeth in Paris in this very beautiful photograph where he took a photograph of her, with him to Paris and creates this still life of kind of bringing Elizabeth to Paris. He documents himself in his living quarters. When he brought this picture to me, he said, "Look, I'm a young man again." He'd done a series of distortions for a film that was being made on him, and the distorted mirror made him kind of elongated. He was no longer kind of a crumpled old man, and this photograph kind of made him look stoic and strong. And I often relate this picture to this early 18 photograph of Hungary. I always see all these different pictures inside the pictures and how they connect to each other, because I'm crazy, but also because I look at them so much. And I can't help but see this in this, and this photograph of him when he thought he was here to conquer New York. He now is in that same stature, having conquered New York. So he was now the man he thought he was going to be when he arrived in 1936. He's no longer dwarfed, disappearing. But he did create this. This is one of his last photographs, and it's a distortion that he made on an assignment in 1982 with the woman who was doing a film on him for American Masters. And it's a door distortion. And, what a perfect photograph as his exit scene. This is a picture where you look at it and you just say, oh my God, like he knows he's on his way out. I was working for him, collating negatives in 1985, and I called him up one night and said to him, he just sounded listless. I was explaining to him where I was at and taking care of the negatives. He didn't want me in his apartment as much as, as much as we enjoyed each other's company. He wanted me to be working on his archive at home. And he was just listless and tired. And it was late in the evening, so I was a little concerned about having called him. And I said to him, "What's the matter, Andre?" And he said, "I'm all used up." With that, he made his exit. That evening, he went to bed and unlocked his door so that he could be found in the morning, and went to sleep and didn't wake up. And I'm not telling you this sad story for a reason of making you melancholy, although Andre would be very happy if you walked out of here with a melancholy overlay. It's just an incredible body of work, which really reflects the whole concept of I photograph what I feel. Andre came to photography from a different point of view, a very Hungarian point of view, and suffered because of it, because many people didn't understand him, and it took 30 years in this country for people to come around and understand the greatness of his work. And I always say, suppose Andre's work had been embraced by these newspapers and magazines in the 30s and 40s, would we be a different society? If that kind of work was being reproduced. So Andre was boxed out of the conversation when he came here and spent the better part of 20 some odd years struggling to become recognized. And his body of work prospered because the more pain he was in, the more powerful the body of work became. So we are internally, or I am internally grateful for what he went through. But it's just a very, very powerful body of work. And most people say, "Oh, you worked for Andre? That must have been fun." It's such beautiful work that people don't realize that the messages are disguised underneath the photographs. And if you take away anything from this, it is to try and look at the photographs from the perspective of a man who's trying to actually become recognized, and a man who's trying to actually get his point of view out there. And again, this is my overlay. This is my understanding from sitting with these photographs for the last 40 years or so. You shouldn't walk away with it thinking that's what you're going to see. Great art, any great art is a mirror. You'll see yourself in these photographs. You'll see pieces of information about you in them. So go at them, look at them with a fresh eye. Look at them with my eye, but most of all, you're the judge. Photographs and any great art will speak to you in a way that actually you want to hear them. And I thank you for sitting through this, and I hope I've enlightened you somewhat on who Andre Kerte to me really was. Thanks. Thank you. A little long, sorry. I don't know if there's time for questions. Does anybody have any? I think there's a mic around. I've silenced you all.
When did you first connect with Andre?
1978. I was on an artist project, and I was interviewed for the artist project, for the archive, and I happened to be triggered into talking about Andre Kerte, and the person interviewing me, Nancy Stevens, who I'm eternally grateful for, worked for Soho magazine, and she knew Andre, and she said, "I have to bring you to him." And within months, I was doing odd jobs for him. I was a carpenter as well as a photographer, and I was a big, tall guy who could move furniture and do all sorts of things for him. And I was willing to kill for him because I had spent the last 7 years of my life obsessed with his work. I had been given a book of his when I was 16 or 17, and it just set the course of my life. So